Well, in the city this week, college basketball is off the chain. We have March Madness at the Garden, and we also have the ACC coming here next year. And joining me is John Torelli, sports editor for the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. Welcome, John.
Always glad to be here, Mike. We had the press conference Wednesday at Barclays Center. Brett Yormark, the Barclays CEO, has really done a great job of integrating college basketball as well as big-time professional boxing here in the Barclays Center. Announced that they had entered a 2-year agreement with the Atlantic Coast Conference to host their postseason tournament in the years 2017 and 2018 right here in downtown Brooklyn.
So we also have the Atlantic 10, right?
Well, the Atlantic 10 had to drop out of those 2 years, which they were under contract for, but they will be here in 2015 and 2016. And then on the back end now, they get a 3-year deal, 2019, 20, and 21, to have the Atlantic 10 postseason tournament. And that's quite prestigious as well. They had 6 teams in the NCAA tournament as well this year. And as an extra caveat, now the ACC and the A10 will have a little head-to-head tournament of their own in season, and some of those games will be at Barclays as well.
There's also talk, you were telling me that he's negotiating now with the NCAA.
Well, Mr. Yormark did intimate that, that's something that they're hoping to work out in the future. Obviously, Madison Square Garden beginning tonight. It's been a long time since we had big-time tournament games here in New York City.
Since the scandal, right? Since,
right.
Back
so
in
now
61?
you're going to have the NCAA tournament regional rounds here tonight. Obviously, big games, and I think it's just a natural fit. And now that a conference as prestigious as the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is obviously one of the most prestigious conferences, they're going to be playing here as well.
And those who don't know, the background on that was about 1961. It was the last time it was held here, right? The
right,
NCAA,
the
because of the corruptions
tournament,
with
right.
Jack Molinas and that whole
Going
crew.
forward, I mean, I think that this will be a regular thing, that you'll have second and third round NCAA tournament games at the Barclays Center, and that might even be before the ACC gets here in 2017, but of course I'm not privy to how far in advance the NCAA has scheduled other regionals.
Okay, speaking of NCAA, this week was a major blockbuster story when it comes to college sports. College athletes want to share the wealth with the NCAA. They're making billions of dollars in terms of TV contracts, football, basketball, also in terms of sponsorship. They're making money, and the athletes want more than their scholarship. They want to get paid also. Where is your thought about that?
Well, I think it opens up a can of worms. I think obviously there's no doubt that these kids put in an extraordinary effort.
You say 40 hours a week, some of them it's a job.
Beyond, sometimes 50, beyond what a normal student athlete does when you're talking about a major college football program.
Right.
The thing is, how do you delineate exactly who gets what and who deserves a stipend and who doesn't?
I think here it goes. Football brings in a lot of money, right? Basketball also. Okay. Maybe each of the colleges, maybe football should have their own union. Maybe basketball should have their own union. And then the rest of the money will go to tennis and track and field.
Like I said,
golf.
Once you open that Pandora's box, the thing you have to remember is, what about universities that get their most money from their marching band? What about universities that have a cheer squad that goes on national tours and produces a lot of money for the university? Do those young ladies now deserve a stipend?
Are they bringing as much money as football and basketball?
Well, if we're
basketball's bringing in billions of dollars,
if we're just
right?
going to make it about that, then are we going to say, oh, here's a star athlete and here's a guy that doesn't even get to play, that's 4 years there? Do they get the same amount?
Well, that's in terms of when you get your scholarship, you got to, I guess, negotiate your scholarship now. Right?
Good luck negotiating 100 different deals for every student athlete. If it's going to be the same across the board, that's fine. And then they're going to get a certain amount of money, but that's not going to stop a student athlete from going ahead and doing the things that they're trying to prevent by giving them a stipend, which is go to outside resources for money.
And also the other thing is too, for recruits that are looking to go to some of these big time colleges, what colleges are going to be a union school? What colleges are non-union school? Yeah. You get into that. It's almost like certain schools are Nike schools, certain schools are Adidas schools or Under Armour.
We're just at the beginning of this, and obviously this isn't going to take weeks to decide. This isn't going to take months to decide. This is going to take years and years of legislation before you have a definitive answer on this.
And the other thing the players were complaining about also, from what I read, is about medical issues. If they are injured, if they injured a knee, they injured an ankle, and they don't play the next season, they're not treated, and they're kicked off the team, and there goes their scholarship. That's another issue also. Right. And some of these injuries also linger on for years after their football or college football career is over. And that's another thing that hopefully the schools will share that expense, the medical expenses.
Sure, so if some student athlete who's a lacrosse player suffers the same injury, Are we saying that he's of less worth as a
Well,
student
you know
athlete
what?
than a football player?
I believe, as President Obama says, all ships, will come afloat. Because if a football player is injured, or a basketball player is injured, or if a lacrosse player is injured, that player should be treated even after his career is over.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
But the money's there. So it's all a matter of how you're going to divvy up the money.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll work it out, but it's not something that's going to happen immediately. Obviously, this is a groundbreaking case, and the student athletes at Northwestern should be commended for bringing to the surface something that has been talked about for a long time.
Right.
How effective it's going to be going forward, or how they're going to figure out a way to do it, again, it's going to be years of legislation.
Do you think this puts also the NCAA on edge, or?
I'm sure they'd prefer for it not to come up, but at the same time, these kids feel they have a legitimate gripe.
And also locally, do you see this coming about locally?
Well, we have Division I programs here, and
Right.
there's no doubting that when LIU went on its run of 3 straight NCAA tournaments, that was a legitimate boon to the university as a whole. So now we're going to pick apart how much money the university made as a matter of that and try and redistribute it via stipending to the student athletes in that particular program as opposed to the other programs.
Right. And
like
also, St. Francis, they have a pretty good, the basketball team did well, but their water polo team is the best team.
Right, it's a Final Four team, but how much money does that bring in, right? So we're going to pick and choose according to dollars and cents who's worth what. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of student athletes that are going to be on the wrong end
And
of
the
that.
other thing also, this also puts in terms of relationships with the coaches, how much a player will practice, how much a player is going to take from a particular coach, because there's a certain rule in the union that coach has to follow.
Like I said, I'm sure the NCAA hopes that it goes away.
I don't think so. I think we're in for a long haul. Well,
yeah, I think that in their wishes they wouldn't want it, but at the same time, you're probably right in that it's going to continually
and wherever
be
the money,
bubbling
and
to
I
the
guess
surface.
I know who's going to make out like bandits. The lawyers.
Sure.
They always do.
They always get
They
paid.
always get it. All right, let's turn to the NBA real quick. We'll talk about the Nets. They're doing quite well. They lost. I know they lost.
Well, they had a tough road trip.
Right.
They had a great come-from-behind win in Dallas, which they won in overtime, and then they suffered 2 really bad overtime losses, especially the game in New Orleans.
3, right? 3 straight?
Yeah, 3
Unheard
straight
of, right?
overtime games. The second one in New Orleans was the one that hurt because they had a 22-point second-half lead against a team that's not a playoff team, and they squandered that, wound up losing in overtime, and I think that's the one that you really look at as that one changed the trip, because they could have easily come home 2-1 on the trip and felt good about themselves. Now they come home 1-2, but remember, they've won 11 in a row at home. They got 3 straight home games, starting with Cleveland tonight, Minnesota Sunday, and then you got Houston coming in for a big TNT game.
Toronto's the top team in their division right now.
Right.
How do you see them?
Well, there's 12 games left in the season, and because of these 2 losses, the Nets now find themselves 2.5 games out of first place and 2.5 games out of fourth place in the East, which would mean home court advantage in the opening round. So let's see what happens over these 12 games. I'm not ready to call them dead yet, but even if they were the number 6 seed and got Toronto in the first round, that's not a bad matchup.
They're doing better. They're better than the team across the water.
Absolutely.
Spring is here. Are you
and
in
they're
shape?
still alive.
Are you in shape?
Yeah, I'm in shape.
All right, cool. Because you don't have to be trained athlete or even have access to a gym to stay in good shape. We've all been told that at least. In fact, up next, we'll show you how much you can do without equipment and with just one other person. But first, from last night's B-side premiere, here is Soul Khan. I like